fix Woody there. Well, hello there. Super Addy B here. Welcome to another Deep Thoughts already. Back again so soon. Um, yeah, this is the late night hour, the late night edition. It's like 1:40 in the morning. Gotta take your opportunities. But really, I just wanted to, make sure I made one of these for one on, one of my days off when I have time, and because I just really wanted to talk about another topic. And this topic, this time around, um, really, now when I started, my, you know, my intentions when I started this, whatever you want to call it. I'm reluctant to call it a podcast still. When I started this Deep Thoughts thing, I wanted to actually not talk about super serious or rather controversial topics. Um, you know, Politics and such. I can't help it. It's something that I just really I like the political in a way. I'm fascinated by the mayhem and everything that's going on in the world today, and I'm very interested in it, and I think about it a lot, and I like talking about it. And so, even if I wanted to stay clear from political things or controversial things in these deep thoughts episodes, it's going to slip in somehow. So, I might as well just try to, my idea was to make a quick thing where I just kind of talk about a maybe controversial topic real quick, because if you know me, I like to talk about political things on social media platforms. And when I even really started sharing anything personal like that, I really did try to make sure I came from a way or a side that was just trying to show another side of things. And I really did want to conversate with people about it and try to hear out the other side. And not to say I was always good at it, and still am not, but I really kind of gave up trying that anyways for a while. And if I'm going to talk about anything controversial or political on here, I'm hoping I can at least take this as an opportunity to present it in a fair and hopefully mostly non-biased way. Which, let's face it, it's bias is gonna be in there, and if it slips in there, I'll make sure to call it out at least. But so the topic I wanted to talk about that is, I guess, controversial, is mail-in voting. Yeah, this is one of those things that's like I don't ever think about or even really know about until it's becomes like a hot topic that's talked about, in the media. And of course, there's so many other examples of that. Um, and just something I guess that maybe was in the back of my mind, but like again, I've never thought about it. I'm 26, going on 27. It's awful, so old. And I've voted 3 times. No, twice. Oh, I'm so stupid. I voted twice in my life. um, and so I don't know, I still don't know a lot about it. I really don't. I don't know a lot about a lot of things still, but that's why I'm always trying to learn. And this topic, when it started getting talked about, of course, I had my, general bias up front about it. But I've heard and read some good points on the other side that have really made me actually try to look into it, and I really do see both sides of this argument, I guess. Um, which I'm going to get into why I don't think it's so much of an argument, but so anyways, so people are talking about mail-in voting right now, and if that's the way to go because of obviously recent events. Um, I'm not going to call it the coronavirus. I just I can't take that very serious. I don't know. I don't know why. It sounds stupid. It just sounds dumb. COVID-19, whatever. Obviously has it would make sense that because of a pandemic, such a situation that we would talk about or think about maybe staying home and mailing in our ballots, mailing in our votes. Excuse me. Take a sip of coffee. So there's this, I guess, there's a side that's very much so good with that. It makes sense to people that they would want to mail their votes in and not go to the polls if they're worried about COVID and spreading germs and or catching things, all that, whatever. Um, Obviously, that would make sense. And then there's a side though that thinks it would be better, possibly more secure, to just go to the polls like normal. Now, I say normal as in that's the average way. The average way the average person in this country votes is going to the polls. Now, when I had to look into mail-in voting, a couple things came up. Mail-in voting and absentee ballots. So first off, these things have been around, specifically like absentee ballots, since the Civil War. My throat's so dry, dude. Right. Um, they were originally intended for people who were away from home, during election time, who still wanted to vote, specifically like soldiers, Civil War soldiers. So it's always been a thing. Again, during World War II, it was a big thing, and um, it got to a point where, and then in the 1980s in California, because with absentee ballots, to request one, you would need a reason, like I'm at war, or I'm out of state, or something like that, or maybe I'm sick, or something like that. Um, and in the 1980s, I guess California did away with needing even a reason for an absentee ballot, which makes it kind of just straight up like mail-in voting. Because mail-in voting, when that's implemented, which it was in Oregon, I believe in '98 or something like that, where that's when they just automatically send the ballots out to all registered voters. And I think Washington and Colorado have followed since Oregon, or since 2011, 2013, I believe, where they implemented mailing out all ballots as well as an alternative option to going to the polls. It's important to keep in mind. So when mail-in voting is implemented, or when you're requesting absentee ballots, where you, depending on where you live, need a specific reason, those are options, other options to voting that have always been an option for a while. Again, depending on where you live. So, so I had to really look into or think about why this is even a controversial topic or a subject, because when it started getting when I started hearing about mail-in voting, it was definitely around um, when COVID broke out. And I think there were some early elections that went ahead and implemented mail-in voting, like maybe Ohio and um, I don't know, some other places, Wisconsin maybe. I have some examples that I'll talk about here in a little bit. But so, and when I first started hearing about it, due to whatever um, biased media, or maybe just the media that I listen to or read. I mean, I try to look at everything, and really, when I first started hearing about mail-in voting, I started to hear about fraud attached to it at first, and that there's a worry that there might be mass fraud if we start doing more mail-in voting for this election and for these elections coming up. Uh, so that's where my first thoughts were kind of going with that at first. Well, then, you know, you have the president coming into the picture, and he makes a statement about mail-in voting. Um, where he talks about it, that he thinks it's a horrible idea, it's a bad thing, and that's insecure. He made a tweet about it saying that Republicans should fight very hard when it comes to statewide mail-in voting, and talking about how the Democrats are clamoring for it, yada yada. Making it a political thing, I guess, and I think that's what made it, obviously, like when the president ever says anything, it makes it more of a controversial or talked about subject. And so I think people started, heard, heard his thoughts on it, and started to look into why maybe he was not wanting mail-in voting. Um, or, I think people were also upset at the fact that it was being politicized. But I would say that it's for a very big election. It's already political. It just is. There's still people who complain that certain people politicize COVID. It was politicized from day one. It just was. They stamped it political from day one, and so now it, like forever, will be. Especially because people continue to politicize it. Certain people. This is, same thing. This was stamped extremely, extremely political right from the get-go. Okay, which of course it has to do with COVID as well. So, yeah, double whammy. So I think that made it a controversial thing because, well, one, people, like I said, are wondering why is he pressing or pushing so hard against mail-in voting. Some good points, and reasons that I've heard and read from people, also slash the media, because they were quick to try to chop with the things down that he was saying about mail-in voting. He started talking about things. I can't remember exactly what he said. Maybe throwing some statistics out there about it that people were saying weren't true. There was a Politico article going around saying how there was like 28 million missing ballots in the last couple elections or something. And then I think they fact checked themselves and said there wasn't. Or I don't know. It's stupid. But so people started, of course, going in on the president about how it's hypocritical of him to say these things about mail-in voting because mail-in voting is obviously it's a thing that's already you know been around. It's been done. You point out the military vote by mail, and Trump himself has voted by mail. Um, so you know those are some good points, and what makes those good points and why I do understand people's frustration with these things and what makes them so upset about these things is how hypocritical they seem coming from him. And I understand that. Look, I understand that, Like I said, I'm trying to really listen to people and like really listen to people and really try to understand why they're feeling the way they're feeling because man, it's an emotional time right now. It is, and I've had to really realize that. And that's why I want to really change the way that I go about these things and how I talk about them because I understand people are really worried about things right now for very good reasons. People are very scared of things right now, and they're worried about this upcoming election. So I have to keep that in mind and understand that. So I get it. It sounds hypocritical, and makes people want to vote by mail probably even more. Um, so I get that. Now, see the other side of that would say that there is another side, and there's an argument to be had about why people would be specifically worried about this election being riddled with voter fraud from mail-in voting, and just screwery all around. um, there's going to be so much craziness coming up this election. Just probably haven't seen nothing yet. Um, well, for one, there. Okay, for one, like I said, the controversy I would say comes from the president being hypocritical about it. But there's one thing that I still can't really see, and I'm trying to see it, and maybe somebody could point out a better example to me or explain this better to me. But is how the president is suppressing voters because it's from my understanding really that he simply has talked about he doesn't think it's a good idea for governors to implement it statewide. Um, Now, I guess okay, it would be suppressing people who truly, of course, are worried about going to the polls, and that is valid right now. That is a valid reason for people to want to mail in their ballots. Um, but and maybe it depends on state to state, and I should have looked more into this about it. But um, without the governors implementing statewide mail-in voting and sending everybody the ballots, can't the people who don't want to go to the polls still just request absentee ballot? And I think the big worry, of course, about that is will COVID be a good enough reason for every state? and that's a legitimate worry. Um, so in that sense, if people really truly are worried about going to vote and their state will not give them any other option but to go to the polls, I can understand how that would be suppressive or suppressing somebody's vote. Now again, the president has not made any law or executive order saying that that governors cannot implement that. He's just strongly advised against it. So, no. Which again, I see the problem in that. But to look at the other side, and there already has been examples of elections in Wisconsin, and people have been recently convicted in New Jersey of voter fraud in elections that were doing casting out ballots in the mail, and ballots were being dumped and thrown away and not counted, and so it's like, you know, again, vote by mail has and absentee ballots has been a thing for a long time, and fraud has not been a big um, you know focus of it, um, or hasn't been shown to produce much fraud in its history, right? But of course, until now, there's some fraud popping up with it. So, folks, when it's this big of an election, it's this big of a deal, like I said, you have to worry about both sides messing with things. So, understand that yes, the president or anybody shouldn't be telling people who are worried about going to vote that they should have to go put themselves in risk and go expose themselves to whatever and go vote in person. They shouldn't be told that right now. I do believe that. But also let us be mindful that there's a political party right now who desperately seeks to win this election. And it has been proven that they tried to mess with things the last election. And go by 3 letters, DNC. And it's very possible they may be trying to take advantage of the situation and mess with mail-in voting. Possible. I'm just saying it's important to stay open to both sides. Now, we got a few months to go until it's game time. There's a lot of other things going on right now, obviously, that are very important. Fights for equality and equality and justice, and there's a lot going on right now for sure. So I just hope people can really. It's not everybody. I think it's a small minority of very loud people. If they could just stop yelling at each other about who's right and who's wrong, and try to really listen out to both sides. Look at each other's evidence. Actually have discussions about this and see what route we want to go. I want to look more into this, obviously, and try to continue to learn more about it. But it seems to me that right now, people need the options to vote differently, but there needs to be more security than ever when it comes to that. Also, there needs to be no people. Um, just be careful about how you're making your decisions. Um, you should be able to have the option about how you want to vote, but just be careful and make sure that you're not being manipulated in any way to vote one way or another. I.e., you know, if don't be sh- shamed or told that you should go to the polls and vote because vote by mail is, it's your ballot's going to get lost in the mail and it's not secure and this and that, and you shouldn't be scared of the virus, you should go vote. As well as don't, let people try to strike fear into you and try to convince you that you need to vote by mail. Just really look into both sides and think about, what you want to do and try to come to your own conclusions. Um, like I said, without one side or the other trying to push you towards it, because man, it's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious. Look at that. The sides are so drawn. You see the left just pushing the mail-in voting, mail-in voting, mail-in voting, and you see the right pushing more towards, not mail-in voting. I still personally think that the right is more. It sounds like they're more want to give you the option. I would say, they talk about fraud. There has been instances of fraud. We have to acknowledge that. But man, I don't know, dude. Again, here's my bias bleeding in. The left just feels like they're pushing for it so hard that it just seems like they're up to something. How do you not look at Nancy Pelosi and not see her freaking stupid scarf mask? Okay, there's my little bias. But no, that's all I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to try to display both sides of the argument, and yeah, that's it. Like I said, don't let people push you one way or the other. Don't let people shame you or try to manipulate you. Um, really try to calmly think about your decisions and look into everything before doing so. And yeah, that's about it. Remember to think for yourself and research for yourself. And until next time.